Hello, welcome to the Heroes Forge. We're just going to go ahead and go through a couple of clips from Dave Ramsey, and I'm going to look at the longer form video associated with it. And then after that, we've got something by Orion Taraban. And then, depending on how things go from there, we may take a look at a couple of things from Based Camp on marriage and how wives of today, and when we think about traditional marriage, it's very different from the times of old. And there is a lot of confusion about what the term traditional means. And there's a difference between what a wife traditionally did compared to what we see in the modern society, and maybe how people are confused about what a trad wife actually is when we go ahead and take a look at old terms for that process. So we're going to go ahead and take a look. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Boom. Let me put myself in set. All right. So here we go. We got this post from Yonan. And just to go ahead and set up the context, we've got Dave Ramsey tells a nurse to dump her boyfriend after he refuses to propose until she pays off $90K in debt. This caller, we'll go ahead and watch the video. And then before that, we'll watch the video. And that way you guys can go ahead and get an idea for the context of what's going on here.
My boyfriend makes $250,000 a year, but he does not want to propose until I'm completely debt free.
Interesting.
All right, so she's got $90K in debt. The boyfriend makes $250K, and his standard is he's not going to propose until she's debt free. Dave Ramsey, right here, is known for being somebody that's vehemently against debt. He even talks about buying houses on a 15-year mortgage. So let's go ahead and hear what he has to say on this issue.
You're not going to like me. If you were my daughter, you want to know what I would tell you?
What?
Dump him.
Yeah.
Okay, so right away, he's telling her to dump him. He makes $250K. She's a nurse that's been working in her field for about 2 years. She's got $90K in student loan debt. Let's go ahead and see the rationale and what is said in return.
I mean, he's a great guy.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's making.
So hold on. She's defending him. She says that he's a great guy. And immediately, based on only the limited context of what he's heard so far, he's already painted a picture in his mind about what right and wrong looks like. Let's continue.
You prove your worth.
Based on money.
Yeah.
To him. You're having to buy your way into this relationship. Nope. You're a princess.
So hold up. Back in the day, women did have to buy their way into relationships. This was called a dowry. Shout out to Shaw and the Gold Pill about talking about the dowry. So back in the day, before a woman got married, a woman's family would provide something called a dowry, and that would be a down payment to start a conjugal fund for the family so that the family can grow and develop. And depending on what the roles were expected in that society for that couple, that would go ahead and depend on how much was provided and all of that. Usually it had a lot to do with the woman's father's socioeconomic background back in the day. So for the longest time, for most of recorded history, there was some kind of transaction that happened at the time of marriage. So buying oneself into the relationship. And Dave, who's stuck on the romantic model of marriage nowadays, is advising against that. He says that she's a princess. Let's go ahead and rewind that just a little bit, and then we'll continue on.
Buy your way into this relationship. Nope. You're a princess, and you deserve more than this.
The reason I've been able to
So he says that she's a princess, and she deserves more. Based on what? What are the tangible things that he is basing this assessment on? Now, I think that this is just the general notion that a lot of boomers have and a lot of older guys tend to have, and think that all women are shiny princesses that can do no wrong. Let's continue because she's got something to say about this.
been able to put majority of my paycheck towards my loans is because he does pay for all our rent.
Oh, so you live together?
Yeah, we live together.
So here's the next shoe that's dropping. He pays for pretty much all of the expenses. So almost her entire nursing salary can go to paying down her student debt because the man in this situation is enabling it in the first place. So without this man's provision of her lifestyle, she would not be able to pay off her debt anywhere near as quickly as she did. If she were to break up with him today, she would have to go find another place. She'd have to pay for all her food, pay for all of her rent, utilities, everything. She'd have to go ahead and figure out those expenses. Hey, how's it going, DMG? Good to see you. Shout out to Shaw and the Gold Pill. We were just talking about the dowry just a few seconds ago. Good to see you, man. So Dave is trying to go ahead and convince her to break up with this man, and he is providing the vast majority of her provision so that she is enabled to pay off her debts as quickly as she is. Let's continue in this.
So you're already married, but you just didn't admit it.
Yeah, it does feel like we're married.
Well, that,
Yeah.
gosh,
So what's his incentive to get married? None. The number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. And guess what this is? This is a money fight.
Yeah.
You're just not.
Here's the thing. It doesn't sound like there's much of a fight. She doesn't like that he has a standard for his commitment. His standard is your debt is gone and I'll be open to proposing to you. So that is a standard that he is holding as a man. He earns a substantial sum of money, $250K a year. So because he has earned that spot in society by climbing the social hierarchy, by climbing the income hierarchy, he is afforded a better negotiating position in the dating marketplace. They have been dating for 6 years, apparently. And so they've been together and they live together. Dave is coming at this from the perspective that they're basically already married. In some states, that would be considered a common law marriage, and this guy's got to go ahead and watch out for that. But he is going deep on this and calling this a money fight and a money problem. To him, it's not a money fight. He's just laying out a standard and saying, this is what it is. And I have no problem with a man establishing standards for himself, just like we know that society lets women set all kinds of standards. But yeah, we don't give them any problems. We don't give them any issues. We just go ahead and say, yes, queen, go ahead and go off. Get whatever princess treatment you deserve. This is just crazy. Let's go ahead and look at some of the comments. I went ahead and I had a post on this. And my post got like 50,000 views or something like this. So what I had to say about this was, this is absolutely wild. This man is setting a standard for what he will and will not accept. She calls into a show to get her own biases confirmed, gets affirming advice, and now she's likely to break up with him, who's the best earning man she will likely ever have access to. Best of luck to her. Got 51,000 views, 1.4K likes. Pretty crazy stuff. So maybe we're seeing just a small piece of an overall picture. Maybe we're getting this out of context. Let's go ahead and take a look at the video, at the whole call in its context. I've got it pulled up right here. All right, so it's going to go ahead and start off with the beginning of the call. So introducing her name, but we're pretty much getting the whole context here.
Good. What's up?
I have a question for you. So I've been with my boyfriend for a little over 6 years, and I graduated in December 2023 with about 160 loans.
Okay, so they've been together for 6 years. They live together. She's 26 now. That means they got together when she was 20. She graduated with her nursing degree, and she graduated at the end of 23 with $160,000 of debt. $160K in debt.
$60,000 of student loan debt. I've paid off a lot. I have about $90,000 left.
So if we do math, 160 and you got 90,000 left, that means she has paid $70,000 over 2 years of that debt. So 70,000, that's a substantial amount of debt to pay off in a couple of years. Now, why is this the case? This is the case because this man that she is dating is funding her lifestyle. It is only because he is providing a substantial lifestyle for her that she is enabled to pay off as much debt as she has paid in the first place. Without it, she would likely be in the debt sinkhole like most of her sisters are. Let's continue.
Way to go.
Thank you.
So,
And
so you're
he-
what, 24?
I'm 26.
26. Okay. And what's your what's your career?
I'm a nurse.
Oh, good for you. Okay. And so you got 90,000 left. All right.
hmm And my boyfriend makes $250,000 a year, but he does not want to propose until I'm completely debt free.
Mm.
Interesting.
You're not going to like me.
So immediately he goes ahead and makes a snap decision. He has about 2 minutes into this call and he's already like, nah, you need to break up with him because he's holding money against you. No, he's not. He is enabling her with the money. And he set a standard for himself and what his commitment will require. Let's continue.
If you were my daughter, you want to know what I would tell you?
What?
Dump him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great
No,
guy.
he's
like,
not. No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's
Three-
he's
he's not.
making you prove your worth.
Based on money
Yeah.
to him. You're having to
I mean,
buy
the
your
re-
way into this relationship.
So like I mentioned before, back in the day, we had the dowry where women would go ahead and buy themselves into a relationship. Now, sometimes that would be they work for 5 years working at a house to save up for a dowry so that they can eventually be looked after. Sometimes it was their father that would go and provide them the dowry. The vast majority of the cases, if they were in the middle class or above, if the merchant class back in the day or above, a dowry would be provided. And if there was no dowry, there would likely be no marriage because there was almost always, in the economic model of marriage, a marriage transaction, whether a dowry or a bride price, depending on the customs of the nation involved. Let's continue.
Nope. You're a princess and you deserve more than this.
She's a
the
princess,
reason I've
apparently.
been able to put majority of my paycheck towards my loans is because he does pay for all our rent.
Oh,
all
so
our
you live
bills.
together.
Yeah, so they live together. He pays for everything, basically. So that's how she's able to pay $70,000 of debt in 2 years. Yeah, there's more to this.
Yeah, we live together.
Oh, so you're already married, but you just didn't admit it.
Yeah, it does feel like we're married.
Well, that.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah. So what's his incentive to get married? None.
So let's go ahead and be honest about this. There is so much risk in marriage in the modern day that it makes sense for a man to have standards, especially a man who has built himself up to have an income of $250,000 a year, because he likely knows that the divorce ringer is against him. If she's making $70,000 a year and he's making $250,000 a year, there's a substantial difference in that income gaining capacity. In most states of the union, there's going to be a problem once kids are involved and things like that. If she ends up with custody of the kids, then all of a sudden he has got child support obligations that are based on his 250, likely to be 300,000 by then. So he's got a lot at risk going into this relationship that is not being accounted for here. Of course, he's going to have standards. And we as men should absolutely have standards, especially if we have worked our way up and we have something to show for ourselves, because that is our negotiating leverage in a relationship. The better we look, the better we can provide, the better we can protect, the better our status increases, not only for ourselves, but for the society writ large, the better we can negotiate for a better deal in the relationship market. That's just a fact of the matter. if she does break up with this guy, chances are she's going to be making a huge mistake. And sure, she's a nurse, so she'll be around doctors and all that. But why would a doctor take her seriously? Right? There's not a good track record right here. Yes, she's been in a long-term relationship from 20 to 26. But why would a doctor go ahead and do this? I don't know. He's got plenty of options. He's a doctor. Now, the boyfriend in this case, when he leaves this relationship, when the relationship splits and there's no marriage involved, he's still going to have this substantial income, and he's not going to have the additional burden of this woman going ahead and getting her provision from him. And chances are the women are going to be beating down his door to get on his ticket because he is a commodity that is well wanted and is very competitive in the marketplace that we exist in, because very few men are earning like that. Let's continue.
And this, let me just say this, Haley, and I'm saying this because you're going to have relationships after this and you're going to learn from this. And there's people who are going to watch this call and learn from this. This is precisely why, one of the reasons why living together before marriage it's a bum idea. It's not a good idea, because what happens is you start to make bad relational decisions based off of the financial gain and based off of the pressure that you've already put on yourselves. Yeah. It's a lot easier to walk away from a messed up relationship when he lives over here and she lives over here and we just get together when it's time to go on our dates. It's a lot easier to go, you know what, this guy's a bum, I'm going to walk away. It makes it a lot more difficult when suddenly you're in the same house and then you're splitting the bills and then he's paying for the rent. It makes it very hard to make the natural transitions that we would have made if we had not applied that amount of pressure.
So you move forward in a toxic, unhealthy relationship.
All right. So basically, they're making pretty good points from the perspective of the woman, right? So from a relational perspective, she is at a disadvantage because she is accepting the provisioning of this man, and it is going to be messy for her to break up with him. Right? That's basically what's going on here. Let's go ahead and adjust the camera real quick. But the deal is that she is so much better off financially as a result of this arrangement, which is probably why the arrangement happened in the first place. Oh, we're living together. He's going to go ahead and take care of me. He's going to go ahead and pay all the bills. I could go ahead and use my money to pay down my student loans and all of this. That's why the situation exists in the first place. And so these people are going to go ahead and take her side from a relational perspective and not pay any credence to the fact of how much this man did for her already. Let's continue.
Because you chose to share an address. Anyway, now you're not going to do it. I can tell by the way you're talking. So here's the thing. We love people getting out of debt. You know that. And why do we love people getting out of debt? Because we love people and we want them to be able to prosper. And your number one wealth building tool is your income. You have a fabulous career choice. As a nurse, you'll always be employed and you can always work as much as you want to work. You can work 80 hours a week or you can work 20 hours a week. As a nurse, you'll be able to do that the rest of your life. And you can make a pile of money. All we tell couples to do is to be aligned, be in agreement on how money is going to be handled. Now, he is in agreement that he hates debt. You're in agreement that you've hated debt and you've been working it down. Yeah. Okay. But then he has put up a false block here. I'm just telling you, I love you. And if you were my daughter, I'd tell you not to marry this guy. And because I think this is a false premise. You're aligned on what is important. You're aligned on, okay, we don't like debt. We're going to avoid debt. We're going to get out of debt. And that's not, people have asked me since I came on the air here 35 years ago, should I marry someone with debt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go ahead and deal with the advice and the reason. Okay, so he is known for being an advocate of paying down debt. Absolutely. What he is addressing here is a relational issue that may or may not exist. But what he is basically doing is saying that this man's standard that he set up for himself is unreasonable. I disagree. I think that any man has the right to set boundaries in terms of when he will provide his commitment to a relationship. And this is an example. He has set the standard that he will not propose to a woman who is in debt. And right here, we see Dave and his co-host right here. I don't know what her name is, but she's a co-host on the show, are taking the financial abuse kind of like angle on this. Whereas this man has been providing for her for all these years so that she can go ahead and pay down this debt as quickly as possible. So he advises that she break up with him. He knows that chances are she's not going to do it because deep down, she knows that she's got a good deal here. So let's go ahead and finish up and see what this call wraps up in.
And the answer is always yes.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you love them and you're aligned that we're getting rid of the debt. If you
Okay. So he says, it's okay to get married to somebody in debt as long as you are in love. Love is the number one thing that he said. All right. So love is a wonderful thing. Being in love is great. However, marriages don't live on love. They live on practicalities. And back in the day, marriage had always been primarily an economic institution and then an institution to perpetuate family lines. And then love typically would build after the fact, over time. You would grow an affection over time. That's just what it is. But Dave over here is saying is as long as you love her, go ahead and take on all the debt. So long as you are aligned that you're going to get rid of the debt. I get where he's coming from. I disagree. I think it's one of those things where each man should make a decision about what he will and will not accept in a relationship. And the more negotiating power you have, the higher your income, the higher your status, the higher your net worth, the better looking you are, the more you have with which to negotiate. It is in your best interest as a man to have your circumstances as solid as possible. That's just what it is. That's what it is. Let's continue.
have zero debt, but one of you loves debt and hates saving, and the other one loves saving and hates debt, you're going to get a divorce later. The number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. And guess what this is? This is a money fight.
Yeah.
You're just not having it out loud. You're having it in your head.
Yeah, that's right. Now, what could be going?
He is right here. He is right that there is a money fight going on because this wouldn't be an issue in the first place. She wouldn't be calling into this show if she didn't have some compunctions about this. It's clear that she's doing this on purpose to go ahead and build some sympathy and to build some credibility to say, hey, let's just get married right now. Never mind that I still have $90,000 in debt that you disapprove of. I don't care about your standards. Your standards are irrelevant to me. I want you to propose to me now. I want you to marry me now. That's basically the subtext of what's going on here. Whether or not she's going to admit it out loud, just like she is not admitting that this is a money fight and a money problem out loud. That's why this is going on as long as it is. Let's continue.
Going on, and I'm going to allow a little space for this. He could just be an idiot today, and he just needs to learn a little bit about what it means to be in a relationship and what it means to handle money together.
This woman is just going ahead and calling him an idiot for having standards. This is ridiculous. Every time a man sets a standard in public in a relationship, the world loses their mind because he has the audacity to go ahead and put his foot down and say, no, I will not do this thing, and you can't make me do it. It isn't just about whether or not he can be made to do it. It's about whether he is holding standards for a relationship and for his commitment. And he is. He should be doing that. Let's go ahead and address the comments a little bit right quick. All right. Is Dave against Bitcoin? I don't have any permanent takes on Dave and Bitcoin. I think generally speaking, he thinks of it as a speculative investment. I don't have anything to go ahead and go behind that. Let's see. Woman's name is okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's not her name, but I understand what you're getting at. Let's see. Like when did she even join? Not sure. All right. Let's see. The boyfriend does not want to inherit her debt. Yes, that is the baseline assumption here, is that when they get married, though her debt is separate, technically, legally, however, their incomes are going to be community property. And so, in a way, his money is then obligated to the payment of the debt. So while it's not directly his that he inherits through marriage, it is indirectly becomes a liability in that part of the flow of the money of the household goes to that. Teach people about Bitcoin. You won't have to worry about illegals. Okay. I mean, there's something to that. I don't get in too deep on Bitcoin. I'm more of a real estate guy and a privately held business guy. But like, I definitely see there's a lot of power in crypto. I see it speculative as a balancing agent in an overall well-diversified portfolio. But Bitcoin, there's something there. Let's see. Is Dave Ramsey against Bitcoin? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure. He's against gold and precious metals because they're not really a fungible store of value in the traditional sense that it's sold against. So that's the deal there. 90K in debt is a lot, and I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole, right? So now that I have built myself up to be where I'm at, I would not accept that either. I would want to see her putting in some work to make it happen. Chances are I wouldn't be, if I were back in the market today, that wouldn't be my target audience. But I wouldn't be taking on 90K of debt for her. She'd have to go ahead and prove herself. And for the gold pill audience, it would be great if she came with a dowry. I don't need the dowry, but it's one of those things that would be great. Let's see. Her irresponsibility from the past is simply transitioning to irresponsibility in the future. And before you know it, she'll be 200K in debt and you will be on the hook. All right. So in this case, she had 160,000 in student loans. She paid off 70,000 over the course of 2 years. She's got 90K left. None of the other debt, if there's any, has been mentioned. It's just student loan debt that was mentioned here. I don't know anything beyond that in terms of monetary habits, but she's enabled to pay down the debt as much as she is because she's with this man in the first place. Because he is paying for her lifestyle, she has the ability to pay down the debt as aggressively as she has. Let's see. I really wish I had a work from home job. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people do, and it's just a matter of skill set and whether that works for the company that you're working on. All right. Now that we caught up on chats, let's continue on.
You said one thing that might cause me to go, I wonder if I brought this to him and, saw a premarital counselor, if we can get on the same page, is it seemed like he was willing to help with the debt. Now, you guys aren't, married yet, but in a married relationship, it seemed like he was willing to help, but he was helping in the wrong way. And so that's the only thing that makes me think he
is funding her lifestyle, which is helping her to pay down her debt. Funding the lifestyle, paying for rent, paying for everything, basically, is enabling her to aggressively pay down her debt. There's no way to go ahead and talk around that. So I think this woman is operating from the wrong frame in so many ways. Let's go ahead and take a look.
He might possibly simply be misguided because he said, I'll pay the rent.
You could go to a marriage counselor,
I'll pay the rent if you do this.
And say, look, let's get aligned on this or we're going to end this.
Yeah.
But if at the end of the day, the answer to the question is, I won't marry you.
Yeah, then yes, we have a problem.
Until you pay off your debt. The question's answered. You
Right.
value that more than you value me.
He values his standards and what he holds for the value of his own commitment higher than the opinion of others, which I think is incredible. Men should be doing this on a regular basis. If you're the kind of guy that is working your rear end off and you've made something of yourself where you're earning good and you've got assets and you are working your way up, you should value your commitment highly. And not only should you value your commitment highly, the way you carry yourself in that process will be generally well received by the society around you until you start getting into particulars like this, where you set out a standard out loud for people, and then all the judgy people will go ahead and show up and be judgy judgertons. Ridiculous. Let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
See you later, alligator.
Yeah. Holla.
After a while, crocodile, you'd be gone. Yeah, I mean, I'll be done with this. I'm just not doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do the cool kids say? See you, Felicia, or something? So
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. Yeah. That's the cool kids. Like 20 years ago, the cool kids, right?
All right. They're just talking at this point. So what the deal is they're basically trying to force the guy into an ultimatum. They're like, take him to counseling. If you guys can't get aligned in counseling, i.e., if you can't convince him to let go of his standards so that he goes ahead and marries you, you should leave him, or you're not aligned, or whatever. I think this is foolish advice from a pragmatic perspective, but I understand where they are coming from on this. They are looking out for this pretty little princess who could do no wrong, and she's being abused in this relationship. Oh, it's so bad that she's got everything paid for and that he is taking good care of her financially, but he won't marry her until she does her part in paying off her $90,000 in debt. Oh, what a travesty. What a travesty. Let's catch up on chats. Right now, basically loosely associated with the debt, but he's not responsible for it. If he gets married to her, he'll be married to the debt. Okay, yes. So debt, depending on what state, is usually individual liability before the marriage. The idea is the indirect nature of it is that the money that he is earning, because it becomes community property, unless there's other arrangements that happen beforehand, like a really good prenup and very clearly outlined sources of income and what's going to be provided to the community pot. There are a lot of very interesting things that you could do as a man of means. But if we're going to look at the default case, which most people are really familiar with, that money is community property, and any of it that goes to pay down the debt basically is sucking the life out of the rest of the relationship. So yes, indirectly, he will be responsible for that debt. Sorry, voice to text features doing typos. Dude, you're good. I get it. That happens all the time. This is a really good channel. The topic is great. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it. If you like it, go ahead and hit a like on the stream and hit the subscribe button. Would appreciate it. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna give it a little bit and see if there's anything else.
Yeah.
If not, we'll go ahead and do the next.
I'm gonna remember that forever, Dave. That was great. See you later, Felicia.
I get off.
Okay. Bye, Felicia, is what the deal is. All right, cool. If you want to see the whole episode, I've got it linked in the description. I've got a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey, generally speaking, in terms of financial advice for the masses. I think that his programs generally are pretty good in terms of introducing people how to get out of debt and things of that nature. I think for 80-90% of people in the United States, his recommendations are really solid and a really good place to get started. And then as you build up, you can go ahead and seek other advice from there. All right. So I've got a bit of a palate cleanser after that one. So this one is a stay-at-home dad is going viral after saying that being a full-time parent is actually the easiest job he's ever had, despite also working 5 other jobs. He doesn't currently work 5 other jobs. He has worked 5 other jobs as a basis for comparison. Now, this is basically a response to a lot of the housewives that go, oh, the emotional load. Oh, I can barely do this or barely do that throughout the day. Oh, there's only so much I can do. Oh, babe, I can't do it. And not only that, just leave me alone. I'm going to go to sleep. Go sleep on the couch. Let's go ahead and see what this guy has to say.
Stay-at-home Dad Chronicles. If a stay-at-home mom tries to convince you that her job is hard, no, it isn't. I'm a stay-at-home dad of 5 children, all 7 years old and under, and my life is a vacation. In addition, my kids are homeschooled, so they're here 24/7. I also do all the man work, all the house and car maintenance, taking out the trash, etc., etc. I'm almost 37 years old, and I've had almost every single job there is. Culinary industry, construction, destruction, white collar, warehouse jobs, delivery jobs, I worked at a poultry plant one time, and my job was to stand there for 10 or 12 hours on an assembly line cutting chicken throats with a poncho on. Do you have any idea how boring that is? Compared to every single one of these jobs, my life now is a vacation. I have a list of things I want to get done that day, and besides that, I get to do whatever the fuck I want. I don't understand how some of these women have 1, 2, maybe 3 kids, who more often than not have been gone at public school most of the day, chuck their kids like they're cornhole bean bags at their overworked husbands as soon as they walk in the door, or tell them to do shit around the house. What the fuck have you been doing all day, bro? Some men like to do all that when they come home, and that's cool, but you got to understand when you're being taken advantage of. Then on top of that, they won't even let them crack most of the time. And that right there is just plain unacceptable. Hold on real quick. I want you guys to listen to something. If your turkey doesn't sound like that, or it's not this juicy, you didn't do it right. Ladies, just streamline your day and do your job. Leave that man alone and let him crack. It's that easy. No need to overcomplicate things. Hurry and get me to 50K before my balls start clacking against my...
I think he's right on the money with this. I think he is right on the money that, for the most part, emotional load... Well, let me go ahead and adjust the screen. All right. For the most part, emotional load is self-inflicted for the most part. It's a matter of bad processes, bad procedures, and generally anxiety about doing the thing instead of actually doing the thing. And so he's got plenty of kids. He homeschools them. He sets out jobs for himself to do. He does all the man work around the house. He handles pretty much all the things. And he's got an easy life. And he admits it on social media. And this man has been getting blasted all over social media, but I think he's right. And he has commentary about the other folks that are in this stay-at-home mom position where they don't have any energy for him, and they basically shove the kids at the man as soon as he comes home from providing for the entire household, and she doesn't have the energy to go ahead and give it up later in the day. That's freaking crazy. Freaking crazy. I think this man has done great things. And I've got another clip of a woman reacting to this and then him reacting to her reaction. But I've got something to kind of set that up so that we can better analyze that together as we go ahead and watch through this stream. Because I try to set things up so that we can think about things critically and see what's going on beneath the surface. So we're going to go ahead and catch up on chats right quick. Foolish advice. I concur. Yeah. I mean, Dave Ramsey, like generally speaking, good advice, but in that situation, her breaking up with him would not be in her best interest. So that's just one of those things. Next up. The thing is, what she needs to do is go find a guy who's deeply in debt and get with him. Then they could have problems together. Yeah, but the thing is, she's with somebody that's already making $250K. So like her setting, her expectations are really high. So the fact that a guy that makes $250K is extremely rare as it is. I think it's less than 1% of guys that are not married and make it $250K. So like there is so few opportunities for her to meet somebody else, let alone meet somebody else who would actually give her the time of day. So she is stuck on a high setting. So it's going to be very difficult for her to accept something less. So throughout that call, we could see that there may have been issues with it. Let's go ahead and continue on. Comparatively. Yeah. Comparatively, it was a, less stressful job than other jobs. Like I can't imagine sitting in an assembly line, slitting chicken throats for 8 to 10 hours a day. That would drive me nuts. I need a little bit more mental stimulation. I need more challenge in my day-to-day life. That would be crazy for me, but I can understand how that could be like really obnoxious to deal with. So let's go ahead and hit up Orion Taraban. I really like a lot of what Orion does in his work. And I think that it's really interesting to see his perspective on things from time to time. Let's go ahead and hit this comment up real quick. The stay-at-home dad is comparing things he hated doing with something he likes. Yeah, sure. But that's what he's getting at is he's comparing the attitude that he brings to it compared to the attitude that is often portrayed on social media by women that are in similar circumstances. That is the direct comparison he's making. So he's making a comparison in two dimensions. In one dimension, against other social media influencers that talk about this topic, and comparing the drudgery involved in this job, this thing that he's doing, compared to jobs of his past. Next, if she won't let him do that, then he can just get one of those silicone dolls. Okay. Yeah, I mean, kind of, but I think most guys really just aren't into that. I think most guys, they get married with the assumption that they're going to go ahead and be able to crack at it on a regular basis. I think that most guys, if you were to present to them, hey, you provide for me, you protect me, you do all this stuff, and maybe we'll sleep together once a week. I think that would be a deal that most guys would not sign up for. And once a week is a low standard from my perspective. I think that's not a particularly compelling deal anyway. So if that's like the high bar that you're trying to set, that's not a good sell for me. That doesn't make sense to me. All right, let's go ahead and see what Orion Terban has to say. And we're going to go ahead and leave the mid-roll read-in because out of respect for Ryan, or Orion, so that he can go ahead and get his message out there. Let's take a look.
I'm Dr. Orion Terban, and this is PsycHacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is the end of thought. So I've had the dubious pleasure of being on the receiving end of thousands of women's pointed hostility. Unfortunately, I am unlikely to be the last person to be so targeted.
Ain't that the truth? Chances are, with a lot of the things that Orion Terban says and things that I say, generally speaking, we end up being a magnet for criticism from women because we're willing to tell the truth and provide a different perspective that is outside of their peripheral vision. Let's continue.
So today I'm going to explain what this is all about so that if and when you encounter this phenomenon in your own life, you'll know how to handle it. Keep listening. It may save your life. To understand what's going on here, there are two separate ideas we have to appreciate. First, as I've discussed in a number of my interviews, over the past few years, there has been a radical overgeneralization of therapeutic language. And one of the consequences of this is that therapeutic language has been appropriated for its instrumental as opposed to its descriptive value.
All right, so he's talking about the difference between descriptive value, so saying things for what they are, and instrumental value, the value that these words have in terms of being used as a tool or a weapon. That is instrumental value. That's the difference. These are the two concepts that he's talking about right here with respect to therapeutic language. Let's continue.
And one of the most common uses to which therapeutic language is applied today is the infliction of pain. Make no mistake, therapeutic language has been weaponized. On some level, this is nothing new. Thomas Saz argues in The Myth of Mental Illness that a good deal of medicalized language, especially psychiatric language, is actually mystified morality. That means that instead of calling people bad or evil, nowadays we say that they're unhealthy or toxic.
Absolutely. So we go ahead and call people all kinds of names. We use pejoratives to put people down and to insult them and to villainize them so that people who don't know any better would go ahead and not listen to this person's opinion. Oh, he's a bad guy. I shouldn't be listening to this person. That's basically what's going on in a lot of ways is we see people that will go ahead and handle reputation destruction and other social forms of hostility that often comes from women because that's their primary mode of inflicting pain on others because the realm of the physical is generally out. That's why we, generally speaking, have a sense of decorum and respect when we speak to one another, because we understand at some level that if we go ahead and say something crazy, that we're going to go ahead and get popped in the mouth, and maybe something horrible is going to happen from there. But women don't have that, generally speaking. They go ahead and use reputation destruction and other social conventions to go ahead and attack their adversaries. Let's continue.
The words are different, but they accomplish the same goal, namely the prejudicing of opinion against the person in question. In fact, once someone is labeled as unhealthy or toxic, the expectation is that no further explanation is necessary, and that you yourself will now shun this person as completely as if he were bad or evil. Indeed, medicalized language might be more effective than the old moralistic vocabulary, as the former accomplishes the same goal while simultaneously giving its user an air of scientific credibility.
So hear that. When you use medicalized terms to put people down and to categorize them as evil through their use, you end up having an air of being trustworthy while you are tearing them down. Basically, what you could do is have it look like your wife, and you won't get mad because she finds out, because yeah, that's not how that works. Because what the deal is anytime you go for something other than her, you are taking away from her using intimacy as agency. And so when you take that woman, that weapon off the shelf, they get really mad about it. So that really doesn't go ahead and make sense in that context. But I understand the direction you're going. All right, let's continue.
The user can even adopt a posture of pity toward the person in question, because within this little linguistic theater, the person isn't bad, he's sick. Though, of course, the people who use this language don't then offer to help or heal the person in question, which helps to unmask the thinly veiled contempt and disgust behind the label. It's all a sham.
So if you ever notice how women typically fight on social media, they'll fight with sign language. The late and great Kevin Samuels coined this term. Sign language stands for shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. You're going to see that all over the place. But nowadays, we use therapeutic language to institute this shame and insults and guilt. And then them just going ahead and being stubborn is the need to be right. Let's continue.
And performance. At the end of the day, the weaponization of therapeutic language allows people to assume moral superiority in the very act of attacking others. So it's important that you don't fall for the act.
So a lot of times when you see women casting shame or guilt on people on social media, it works in two ways for women. One, it elevates their station because they can go ahead and operate on some kind of moral high ground. And it serves to attempt to denigrate whoever the target of the shame, the insult, or the guilt is. You are pushing them down and lifting yourself up. This is why it's such a popular tactic that women generally employ, because it is useful in multiple planes. And very rarely is it actually called out for what it is. Let's continue.
And this brings us to the second thing we have to appreciate, namely the operation of cognitive fusion. This is a really important term for you to learn. Cognitive fusion is a mental habit that is actually quite common among personality disordered folks. Basically, it means that a person automatically believes that his or her thoughts are true. Like no space exists in their consciousness between the thought and the belief.
That is crazy. All right. So I can understand how a lot of times people will have very little filter between what they think and what they say. This is very similar. It's what they think and what they feel are intrinsically linked, and it happens instantly. They are fused together because what you believe is true usually leads to your emotional state of being, and why it's so important as men to go ahead and be emotionally stable and to look at the stimuli that's attempting to get an emotional response from us, and to look at it calmly and rationally as often as possible so that we don't make missteps. Let's continue.
Means that they don't have the opportunity to examine whether or not their thinking is aligned with reality. It's actually a very painful and exhausting mental habit, and it's one that can be fixed, but it does take a lot of work and willingness. Now, if I think something and I automatically believe it to be true, then I'm going to feel the emotional correlate of that thought quick as lightning. As I've said before, you can think whatever you want, but you can't feel however you want as a consequence of what you choose to think. Furthermore, given the fact that feelings and thoughts are interrelated, and feelings are like living creatures in that they want to preserve their existence, once an emotion gets activated, it's very helpfully going to offer to the mind thoughts and memories and expectations that align with that emotion in order to keep it online.
Okay, so once you have a feeling, I can identify with this. Like when you're pissed off, you're going to go ahead and have thoughts that are coming to you to continue that anger, right? This resonates with my experience. I get it. However, you can only feel a certain way in accordance with your true beliefs. So you can go ahead and try to get yourself to think things, but unless you believe that which you are thinking is true, it's not going to affect your emotional state of being, like these other things that perpetuate an emotional response, which is all the more reason why it's important as men to be emotionally centered and to be disciplined, so that when something does come up, that we could try to replace it and take some time to sit in that instead of being offered this continuous stream of emotionally evocative thoughts from our subconscious mind. Let's continue.
Put all this together, and you can have a tempest in a teapot in a matter of seconds. Are you finally ready to understand how relationships really work? Then get your hands on my book, The Value of Others, How to Get.
Second, this recommendation. This book is really good. I've got it on audiobook. I've listened to it a couple of times. It is fantastic. He lays out an economic model for mating and dating. Great stuff. Useful for single dudes, for married dudes, for dudes in the dating market. Useful for a context of dating and not dating at the same time. Anything to do with relationships, there is something for you in this book. So, second, the recommendation.
And keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Learn what actually moves the needle, why relationships fail, and how to position yourself for success in this strange new world of mating and dating. Over 100,000 copies sold. Get yours today. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. Let me show you what this looks like using some real-world examples. Let's say you're having a discussion with a woman who possesses the mental and linguistic habits we've been discussing. I'm going to show you how quickly things can go off the rails. Imagine that in the course of this discussion, the two of you have a disagreement about something that happened in the past. You think things happened one way, she thinks they happened another.
This is a common occurrence in relationships where we go ahead and see one set of circumstances from two different points of view. Let's go ahead and continue.
Common enough experience, right? However, given the individual we're dealing with, this disagreement will feel personally challenging. And because that challenge feels unpleasant, even painful, she's going to interpret the challenge as an attack, which simultaneously ascribes to you a malicious intent. Now, the disagreement isn't a disagreement. It's not two people who just remember things differently. It's an attack.
So because you remember something differently than her, she's going to pathologize, as in make you look like the bad guy, like you're sick or something, based on the fact that you look at the same circumstance from a different point of view. This is crazy, but I'm sure he's going to go ahead and tell us a little bit of something about that.
Conscious and insidious attempt to invalidate her experience and overwrite her memory of the event. And she knows what this is. After all, her therapist helpfully taught her the term last week. This is gaslighting. And gaslighting isn't something that normal, healthy people do. No, that's something that toxic narcissists do. Of course, when
So you could see how this progresses. So you start from, you remember the events of a specific thing differently, and you are simply having a discussion about it. And in the very action of just discussing the matter and bringing up a difference in how you remember the events unfolding, whether if it's from a different perspective or not, because she is accustomed to this therapeutic language that is tossed about in our culture, she says, oh, you are trying to attack me and trying to force me to remember this event the way that you remember it. You're trying to gaslight me. And because you're trying to gaslight me, you're all these horrible things. I've seen this happen a lot. Even on Twitter threads, I could see how this happens so much and how this progresses and how things go left so quickly. Let's continue. Hello? Do the thing. Gonna refresh the page.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban.
Let's get to where we were at. And we'll continue.
Whatever you want, but you can't feel however you want.
All right,
as a consequence.
Skip.
1,000 copies sold.
Skip. Here we go.
You think things happened one way.
Here we go.
She thinks they happened another. Common enough experience, right? However, given the individual we're dealing with, this disagreement will feel personally challenging. And because that challenge feels unpleasant, even painful, she's going to interpret the challenge as an attack, which simultaneously ascribes to you a malicious intent. Now, the disagreement isn't a disagreement. It's not two people who just remember things differently. It's an attack. The conscious and insidious attempt to invalidate her experience and overwrite her memory of the event. And she knows what this is. After all, her therapist helpfully taught her the term last week. This is gaslighting. And gaslighting isn't something that normal, healthy people do. No, that's something that toxic narcissists do. Of course, when toxic narcissists gaslight people, they commit narcissistic abuse, which she also recently learned is actually a form of emotional abuse. Notice how we've moved beyond the realm of subjective experience into the weaponization of therapeutic language, gaslighting, toxic, narcissist, and even further into the realm of legalistic language.
So she took a disagreement and she called you a gaslighter and then a narcissistic abuser and then an emotional abuser. So now when we get to the realm of emotional abuse, he's talking about how now the law can get involved because that's an arrestable offense. I'm pretty sure he's going to go ahead and talk about that here right now. But that's insane how this can progress so quickly, especially if you're not prepared for this as a guy. Let's continue.
Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse, for the record, is an arrestable offense. Like, it's difficult to prove, but there it is. And in certain cases, mandated reporters are required to contact the authorities when they're led to believe that it has happened. So now we've moved into some very scary territory. We've gone from a disagreement about past events to accusations with legal implications in a matter of seconds. And trust me, I'm not exaggerating. This kind of thing happens every single day. And it is encouraged on a mass scale by irresponsible content creators that model the very same behaviors, which then normalize this process and encourages their followers to do the same. But here's the kicker. Because the woman, as a consequence of her cognitive fusion, perceives you to be a narcissist engaging in emotional abuse, she now believes you to be an abuser, criminal, predator. In her mind, she is now justified in doing anything and everything in her power to defend herself from this perceived threat, up to and including precipitating its destruction.
So that is freaking crazy. So you go ahead and go from a disagreement about how the events of a certain thing unfolded to gaslighting, to emotional abuse, to all of a sudden now you've pathologized this guy to the point where you are willing, as the woman in this case, to pull out all the stops to destroy this guy. And we see this all over social media every single day on every platform. We see it on TikTok. We see it on YouTube sometimes. We see it on X. We see it on Facebook. We see this kind of exact process happen day in and day out. And it happens in relationships too. And a lot of guys have not been equipped to deal with this properly or to recognize it in such a way to distance yourself from it. Because if you're involved with a woman that is going to be acting in this manner, she's going to come for you eventually. And it's in your best interest to separate yourself from her. Let's continue. Come on now. 825 is where we're at. Let's go ahead and reload. 825.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych-Hacks, Better Living Through.
Okay. Let's get it to load, do its thing.
In her power to defend herself
There we
from
go.
this perceived threat, up to and including precipitating its destruction.
There we go.
Not only that, but as the good and healthy person, she now has the duty and responsibility to purge the world of this toxic, malignant entity. So she'll cancel and silence and protest and denounce and accuse and exclude. And if anyone asks why, she can say, oh, he's a narcissist, or he's a misogynist, or he's a Nazi. And the application of these labels function as a kind of loyalty test for anyone within earshot. Like, what else do you need to know? He's bad, which means that it's your duty as a good person to fall in line with the rest of us good people. Unless, of course, you're also one of the bad ones. Are you?
This is crazy because I see this all the time, especially when we're talking about politics or religion or anything where people's emotions get out of hand. Is they're very quick to apply labels like misogynist or Nazi or anything to go ahead and show that somebody's a bad person, to get other people to try to jump on the bandwagon and either white knight for them or to go ahead and also jump in on the shaming. Let's continue.
And in this way, people are lynched in the court of public opinion, and people are swept into the mob lest they become its next target. It should go without saying, but this behavior, especially when accompanied, as it so often is, with a smug obliviousness to one's own hypocrisy, is the end of thought. It strangles reason and it suffocates discourse.
Yeah, because once you're afraid to talk in a manner that may get you tarred and feathered in public like this, that's when people stop having conversations. Because in times past, it was a regular part of everyday life to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. But in the modern context, so many people are so emotionally charged and they have no filter between their brain and their mouth or their brain and their fingers as they type out the comments, that they can't consider a point of view that is not their own. And it causes discourse to be toxic. Let's continue.
And it is responsible for systematically dismantling the freedoms afforded by liberal democracy all across the West. It is very, very difficult to deal with someone who treats disagreement like abuse.
Mm-hmm.
you are not going to be able to have a constructive conversation with that person. Even therapists pull their hair out over this type of behavior. Remember when I said that cognitive fusion was common among personality disordered folks? Well, Marsha Linehan, the creator of DBT, one of the only empirically validated treatments for BPD, borderline personality disorder, explicitly notes in her manuals that no therapist, a trained professional, no therapist can handle one borderline patient by him or herself. To administer true DBT, therapists are required to work as part of a team. That's how difficult it is to talk to some people. They require a team of specialized doctors. And that's basically how you handle this kind of thing. You don't. You think you're having a conversation about ideas. They think you're a threat to be eliminated. You are not in the same universe. Remember, you are not a team of specialized doctors, and they are not asking for your help. So don't be a hero. As I've previously discussed.
So, bottom line is, if you're dealing with somebody and you think that they've got borderline personality disorder and they're going to go ahead and fly off the handle, then it's probably in your best interest as a guy to disassociate, to break up, to remove yourself as far as possible from this person, because they're very likely to drag you down in some way, shape, manner, or form. That they will attack you for having a disagreement, no matter how small, is likely to happen. I don't want that to happen to you guys. I don't want us to go ahead and have to deal with these nonsense people that should not really have a place in our society when we can't just talk through things and work through to develop solutions to the problems that we have as individuals and in families and in society. It is absolutely crazy that we have a lot of this going on here. And if you look at the comment section of so many things of social media, you're going to see this very same thing playing out before your very eyes. Let's continue.
Most of the evil in this world arises from the misguided attempt to purge it of our own projected darkness. But because of cognitive fusion and because of the speed and force of those judgments, people don't see this darkness as their own. That requires mindfulness and patience and insight and critical thinking, which is why the world looks the way that it does. These qualities are not possessed by the masses. They probably were never possessed by the masses, but there's just now a platform for the masses to speak at a level that has never been historically encountered. And the more convicted people are in their own judgments, the more harm they feel justified in perpetuating in the world. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Have you encountered something like this?
I think that he's right on the money here. This fits perfectly with my lived experience. I see this every single day on social media. I see this every day in the comment sections in Twitter. People post something that's somewhat controversial. Someone gets feelings and they go ahead and attack. And not only will they attack, they'll go ahead and repost. They'll try to go ahead and go after people. Now, I've got something on X that is related to this previous video that we looked at that Dr. Orion Taraban helped us so that we can go ahead and take a look at and see if we come to similar conclusions. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and change this view. And we got this guy again. So this guy is doing a response video to a woman who is responding to the viral video that we went over earlier about how housewives have it fairly easily. Let's take a look.
Stay-at-home dad chronicles. No need to overcomplicate things.
I know we don't know each other, but I'm Kendall, and I'm here to your day right up.
Ooh.
See, I'm not a mom, so I have no idea what it's like to be a mother.
Excuse my fucking pardon. What did you say? Apple cider vinegar.
Over 85% of consumer purchases are driven by women, specifically stay-at-home moms.
And who's buying it, Kendall? Catch up.
I went through your profile and took notes about every single consumer brand that you have worked with and have sent them messages letting them know that one of the influencers that they work with just came online to shit all over their most valuable audience.
So this woman got so offended at this video that he did that she took the time to go through all of his videos and to look at all of the brands that he has ever worked with and sent them messages to try to target this guy and destroy him just because they have a disagreement about things. She's not even a mom. Nose ring theory is confirmed, by the way. Look at that nose ring that she's got. We'll go ahead and pull her up. I'm sure she's got more to say. But doesn't this fit in exactly with what Dr. Orion Taraban was just saying? He was saying that oftentimes people will go ahead and get so wrapped up that they are willing to vilify other people and go at great lengths to attack them viciously because they see them as evil. And when they see them as evil, it justifies all of these actions. Let's continue.
I didn't. Just the ones that were taking advantage. Soy sauce.
And I would also encourage my audience to go ahead and tag all of those consumer brands in the comments of this video over and over and over.
So she is not only doing it personally, she is using her platform to try to get all of the other Karens in her viewer group to do the same thing. Look at this nose ring. Nose ring theory confirmed. This is multiple levels of Karening. Yes, Mad Villainy. Yes, this is a very Karen-y Karen. And she tries to add some more Karen in her Karening. Let's continue.
Just so we can make sure that they're aware of the kind of piece of shit influencer they are associating their brand name with.
That sounds illegal. Is it illegal? Gochujang paste. So to summarize so far, my video, which had fuck all to do with you have no credited authority, no experience, you're not a parent, offended you, and now you're trying to starve my 5 children and or cause instability in their home, even though you make yourself out to be such a humanitarian. Okay.
So this is another thing that Dr. Taraban had mentioned, is because she has painted this man as evil, she feels morally justified and morally superior in causing this pain and anguish in this man's life and to cause problems for his kids and to disrupt their lives. This is insanity. This is unacceptable behavior. But this is what's going on in our society day in and day out. We have people that take it upon themselves to be Karens and try to destroy each other for disagreeing about things. That's insane. Let's continue.
I especially want to make sure that everyone tags both Hexclad and Ninja because those are the 2 most prominent brands that have tied their brand with yours.
I've never been affiliated with Ninja. I did 2 gifting videos for Hexclad, and I got my gifts. Looks like you're an expert in jack shit. Onion powder.
But something tells me it's not going to take very long, buddy, before they won't be doing that any longer.
Something tells me, buddy.
Look at how gleeful she is at the perceived damage that she's trying to inflict on this guy. They don't know each other. He just posted something that she got offended about. And this is the lengths that she's going to go through to attack and denigrate this man. Let's continue.
They're not going to be doing that any longer. You didn't do anything. Molasses. You literally just made me more money on TikTok. My turkey video was tapped out at about 600,000 views. What's it at now? Like 2 million? Garlic powder.
Have the day you deserve, asshole.
Oh no, the catchy sign off. Whatever will he do? I think it's funny when women, generally speaking, think that they're having this huge effect by morally grandstanding and all of this. A lot of them do not have the reach that they think they do and do not have the effect that they think they do. But they feel so justified because they villainized these guys that they're just going to go ahead and go through any length to hurt them. This is insane. Let's continue.
God, not the day I deserve. Anything but that. Korean barbecue gochujang seasoning. Turn the heat on low and meld that together. The recipe will be in the comments. Don't you have enough to deal with fucking up your husband's military career? Stupid. Brown sugar. You can't cancel me, Kendall. You can't cancel somebody who doesn't care. You really said I'm not a mother, got in front of a camera, and proceeded to bitch about something you know nothing about. Holy insufferable. You had no argument, no rebuttal, just tried to cancel me and starve my children. And you only made me stronger. Shout out to my man Chisha Zed and King T on YouTube. They both have W takes on this. Go show them some love and support.
Awesome. So this is great. I think this was a fantastic time. This guy went ahead and rose above the attacks. And honestly, she did him some good, even though she meant to do damage to him. But the things that Dr. Taraban was saying about how sometimes people will take offense and then attack people right on the money with this circumstance, which is why I queued them up together. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick look at Based Camp. I love these guys. Malcolm and Simone Collins are hilarious. I've got some interviews to do for promotions.
What I like about the term courtesan
Hold up.
is it helps separate.
Pause. All right, cool. So I've got some interviews because I've got a couple of promotion opportunities at my stores for some of my employees to go up into. So we got to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this up before 2:30 so that I can get there and I can check to see who's going to end up stepping up into leadership. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The first video of this series is two-parter. How women trick men into doing all the work while still playing the victim. Forbidden history. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this for a little bit. And then I'm probably going to go ahead and stream about this later today and handle the rest of both videos. But we're going to go ahead and get a teaser on this. I love these guys.
The researchers say the finding is clear, but the reason behind it is still unknown. On average, men were able to get about 1 meter, 3.3 feet closer than women before the birds took off. This pattern appeared consistently across Czechia, France, Germany, Poland, and Spain. It also held true across 37 species. So Malcolm immediately turns to me and he's like, we know exactly why this is the case.
Yes, this is the question that explains everything we're going to talk about today, and I think proves without a doubt that this is not some Malcolm manipulation of historical facts. You have been in rural Latin America, right?
Yes.
Take an image in your head.
Okay.
You're driving down a rural road. You look out the side of a car, okay? You see somebody with a 60-pound jug of something on their head.
Oh, it's a woman, obviously. Yeah.
Always a woman.
Always a woman.
You go to Africa, you'll see this as well. You go
China too. Let's be clear. China
Right.
too.
Yeah, was it majority women doing the harder labor when you're
100%.
talking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, you do not know how brain cucked you are if a woman has convinced you, we just need to go back to the traditional way and I'll stay at home and you do all this stuff. Because you're so strong. Look at your muscles. Could you open this jar for me? Oh, you see, as a woman, I could just never do anything.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone. Today I'm going to talk to you about the most diabolical brainwashing mind trick that feminists and women have ever pulled on males in human society. And it is that I will hear dyed-in-the-wool males who identify as misogynist, red pill, post-pickup artists, trads, go out there and say, well, we need to go back to the way things used to be, where women didn't work and stayed in the household and just cared for kids. And I see their wives behind their fans with their villainous faces going,
Oh my God.
their villainous laugh. That they have so completely cucked their husbands' brains, that their husbands believe that historically women didn't work.
We must let
Misogynist.
think this was his idea. All right, that he came up with. All right, now he's gonna figure it out. Okay, I know what to do. You don't know what to do. You talk. Do you want my help? Yes, I want your
Vula, how is business?
Oh, woe to me.
My weak constitution, my weak mind. As a woman, I am simply not fit for it.
Business is bad.
So they are setting this guy up in this scene, clearly. So they went ahead and did the whole like witch's coven thing ahead of time. And so now they're going to go ahead and set this guy up.
What's the matter? What's happened? She suffers. She has to be at the travel agency alone all day.
While her kids are at home.
That's right.
So?
Take the kids with you to work.
You'll be with Taki.
That would be good.
That would be no good. No good. No good. No good. Because
When a woman has her kids around, she just can't focus.
And that's why that no work.
no work. I have your answer.
Yeah.
I will do all the work for you, and you stay home all day with the kids.
I can't believe that. Wonderful.
Wonderful. See, a man.
And I
So they lead him to believe that it was his idea. I mean, obviously, they went ahead and dubbed themselves in specific to this thing, but it's really not that far off the mark, which is why the context is on point. Let's continue.
saw this in the comments again recently, where like even
Oh, really?
in this video, guys were like, well, women held some roles historically outside the house, but you know, they weren't like cobblers and they weren't like sailors and they weren't like, you know, stonemasons. And it's like all of that is true.
Yeah.
However, the way that all of those businesses were managed, where if a guy was a stonemason or a cobbler or anything like that, his books and his inventory sourcing and his client sourcing generally would have been handled by the woman. But it wasn't even just that. It was, if you actually look at the statistics around female labor in history, women actually did, if you're talking about hard labor, the labor that fed the family, right? Women actually did the majority of the work over the vast majority of human history. If you go back to, let's say, hunter-gatherer society, for example, because we've been able to study this in great detail, women produced, in terms of daily caloric intake, between 80 and 60% of the calories that the family ate.
Okay, so let's go ahead and draw a parallel right here, because a lot of times traditional conservatives and people of that nature will go ahead and look at traditional marriage and they'll think back to the 1950s. They'll think to this relatively narrow period of time and say, that's traditional marriage, where the guy went off to work and the woman stayed and she had, you know, relatively the life of luxury because he get to do all the hard work and she could go ahead and do relatively easy tasks. Back in the day, so before that, before the industrialization of everything, the hard work, the hard labor of feeding families, like in terms of caloric intake, Malcolm's saying that generally speaking, women did 60 to 80% of the work needed to cause that to come about. Whereas guys would go ahead and be on the hunting side, hunting and gathering side, where they would bring in the other amount of the calories, but the majority of the protein. Let's continue.
Oh my gosh, really?
This is 95%
Wow.
of human history.
Well, this, you know, this also makes sense in other things where you see sexual dimorphism. For example, women having much higher endurance and pain tolerance versus men who are better like sprinters.
Yeah. Or to word it another way, the female body and psychology at an evolutionary level are optimized for grueling labor, while the male body and mind are optimized for warfare and disposability. Neither are totally optimal, but the idea that women are beautiful flowers designed to sit inside all day caring for children far from any risk of manual labor is probably the greatest feminist psyops of all time and completely ahistoric.
And yeah, that implies millions of years of higher workloads.
And this is actually even true. And we're going to talk about like why this is the case. Because note, people can be like, but this just makes no sense. I thought women, because they're the weaker, they must do less work. And it's like, have you ever seen how lions make this shit work? The male lion sits around all day and the females bring him food because that's the way human society is supposed to work.
Oh, God.
And if you go back to the most trad iterations of human society, let's go with the ultra-Orthodox Jews, okay? In ultra-Orthodox Jewish society, do men work? No.
Oh, God.
Men don't work. Women work. Men spend all day studying. You actually see this in
Studying.
if you go to more primitive iterations of Islamic society, I remember this in
Yeah.
Morocco when we were out in the desert,
Okay.
and we met, a traditionalist Muslim
yes.
group.
Yes.
And the men did not work. That was considered like very offensive. Even the idea that a man would have a job. That is, of course, the purview of women to have jobs. And you could say, well,
Isn't that completely wild? That's crazy how, in the modern context, we are fed this lie that women, they're not made for manual labor, right? They're made for a different caliber of manual labor. This is great. Like, it undersells and undercuts much of arguments that are put forth in the modern context. Let's go ahead and continue.
well, Malcolm, surely you don't want us to be like those Muslims or those Jews. And I'm like, well, actually, even if you go back to early European society, most farming through most of human history was done by women. People are like, what? I thought men handled farming. And it's like, actually, men only moved to handle the majority of farming after one particular invention. Do you know what it was?
The plow.
Oh, what was it called? I want to say spinning jenny because it's just the first thing that like comes to mind.
Plow.
But the
The
plow.
plow.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, in regions where the plow is not used due to soil conditions and stuff like that,
Yeah.
the majority of farming is typically done by women.
Huh.
In Europe, before the introduction of the plow, which happened 1000 AD, so pretty recently, the majority of farming was done by women. Unless you were like having slaves do it or something like that. But even when you were having slaves do it and you had like a big estate, the majority of the family's work was still done by women because they managed the family's household and finances, which we will get to. And so if you're like,
So if you're a Christian, like I am, we hear often about this idealized woman in Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 wife. And this woman, you know what? We're going to go ahead and take a quick stroll through Proverbs 31 because it definitely relates to this. And traditional conservatives will go ahead and use this day in and day out to go ahead and talk about women, but they will very rarely actually apply it to themselves. So we're going to do this. I'm going to minimize this. We're going to move this tab over. We're going to be good, responsible YouTube people and do this. All right. So we're going to go past King Lemuel. We're going to go ahead and read Proverbs 31, starting in verse 10. So verses 1 through 9 is sage advice to King Lemuel from his mother. But now we're going to go ahead and talk about her instructions for her son in terms of what to be doing. Let's go ahead and raise this so that it's more readable for you guys. And we're going to read through Proverbs 31 so we can go ahead and take a look at the amount of labor that is being put in by the idealized wife in Scripture. Now, bear in mind that her husband is a noble. He is ruling at the city gates. So this is a woman that is of the aristocracy of her time. So let's read. I'm reading from the New King. Let's see, the New International Version. I'm going to change that. I'm going to go off of the New King James Version. All right. Starting in verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. Totally makes sense so far. I agree. The heart of her husband safely trusts her. I think a lot of guys would really like to have that nowadays. So he will have no lack of gain. Why? She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. Most guys would be 100% down for this. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. So she does manual labor. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night. So that means she gets up really early and she provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. So she is taking responsibility not only for all the children and everybody in the household, but she's taking care of the servants under her charge. Totally makes sense. She's a woman of noble character. She is from an aristocratic household. And she considers a field and she buys it. From her profits, she Okay, here we go. All right. So even though she is doing real estate transactions and she is buying and planting vineyards and things like that, she is doing so with the express consent and oversight of her husband. Let's continue. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. So this goes in line with what Malcolm was talking about as far as them having endurance and using their hands and doing manual labor. She perceives that her merchandise is good and her lamp does not go out by night, which means that not only does she get up early, she stays up late to go ahead and handle these things. She does both ends of the spectrum. She stretches out her hands to the distaff and her hand holds the spindle, which means she's making goods. She extends her hands to the poor. Yes, she reaches her hands to the needy. So yes, so not only is she handling things in terms of overseeing the household, she is doing things of this nature. She is also making artisan goods at night. And she is taking care of the poor around her. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. That means they're well clothed. Scarlet is generally a colored fabric, so is worth more. And that implies that even her servants are well taken care of. We're going to continue. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Purple was a color that's assigned with royalty. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So her husband is taking care of business. He is among the rulers of the city. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies sashes for the merchants. So she is, making artisan goods and selling them. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. So she is taking the time to be well educated. She comes from aristocracy. She is a member of the aristocracy. So she handles herself well. She speaks well of herself and others, and she speaks wisdom. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. That means she is working. She's not just sitting, waving her fan, fanning herself and watching or scrolling through social media and watching all day soap operas and all the things to waste away her time. This is not what this woman is doing. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Absolutely. If she is doing the work, you as a man and as her husband, you definitely have got to give her props when she is earning it, for sure. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. That's his praise for her. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So he's laying out the facts of the matter. Like, look, when she's young and she's got everything popping, that's great. But we understand that women's sexual agency declines over time. And that if she goes ahead and cashes in her chips early, she is much more likely to make the best use of her time with that agency. Give her the fruit of her hands and let her own works praise her in the gates. So this woman is not running around trying to figure out how to spend this man's money. She is actively supporting his mission. She is actively working in the gardens. She is actively overseeing the needs of the estate. This woman is handling some business dealings. She is doing stuff. But this is at the direction and under the authority of her husband. Let's go ahead and go back to what Malcolm and Simone are talking about. And we're going to go ahead and see a lot of similarity. Oh, wrong video. This video. There we go. 8:02, just in case I need to reload it.
Wait. Okay. If women were doing the majority of actual work throughout human history in terms of calorie acquisition, in terms of financial management, what were men doing? What was the male role in human history? Why were women okay taking on this role that seems to be Because like imagine, and this is why I'm saying that like it's such a cuck thing to not know this, is that you're literally going out there when the truth of human history is women both manage child rearing and manage calorie acquisition. Okay. And you're going out there and saying, no, I'll do the trad thing and just do all of the labor. And women can do a quarter of what women ever did historically. But sorry, I cannot get over, because we're going to go over to how somehow women psyops men into believing this. We're going to go over traditional marriage structures, how they developed that way. Because like you were aware of this when we were talking about this, but I just think like a lot of guys, they have this like cargo cult of trad, where they have this vision in their head of what a hunter-gatherer society was like. They have this vision in their head of what early medieval life was like, and it allows them to define themselves, because if they have this idea of like, this is what men did back then and this is what women did back then, that means that, well, if they just emulate this role that they believe is a prehistoric role of what a man is, well, now it's fed into their identity. Like, I am man does X. Okay, so what did man actually do historically? Like, what was the man's actual role in a family?
All right, this is where we get to it. So we know that historically speaking, women did much of the farming. And according to the Proverbs 31 wife, if they're a member of the aristocracy, that all these other responsibilities that they were responsible for. So what were the men doing while the women were doing the hard labor and making sure the kids were good? Let's go ahead and find out.
The man's actual role in a family, and I've talked about this as a way to model your relationships, and increasingly I'm realizing that when I go out there and I can say, here's an optional way to model your relationship, I've increasingly realized I need to stop saying that. People are too stupid, and then they just model their relationships in stupid ways. The ideal way to model your relationship is in what we call a sword and shield relationship.
Yeah.
That means the woman is in charge of making sure the daily caloric needs of the family are met and that you don't lose all your assets. And this is what women mostly did on a historic basis. The man is in charge of moving the family's status upwards, which means that he's in charge of high risk, high reward opportunities. Obviously, if you're only familiar with stereotypes in history, the two examples of this that are going to come to mind immediately are going to be Viking society, where the women would manage the farms and the men would go a Viking, and the men would go on these raids to try to get lots of treasure to raise the family's status, right? Another example would be Spartan society, where women would manage the helots and they manage the farm, and the men would go out and perform their military duties, and they'd come back and they might, acquire stuff. You also had this in Roman society where men would go out. Now less so, because Roman took from Greek society, and Greek society is one of the few societies where women actually almost did no actual work.
Hid in the back of the house.
Yeah, one of the very few.
So he goes ahead and brings up this relationship dynamic that I'm on board with, this idea of the sword and the shield. So the woman goes ahead and takes care of things like the daily caloric needs of the family, takes care of the children, takes care of home education. Depending on the relationship construct that you've set up, maybe she's the one that handles like bookkeeping and things like that. But the guy's role is to move the status of the family forward. And so in my marriage, I've been married for almost 22 years now. In 11 days, it'll be 22 years. And that's basically the structure that we've had in our marriage. My job is to go ahead and climb the mountains, slay the dragons, and bring home treasure. I've done this in my military career. I've done this in doing the investments that we have done, in acquiring real estate, in building businesses, in building various things that I do so that our family's status can increase and so that our children can be better off than I was when I was growing up. This is something that I exactly model, and something that, frankly, I would say that most families should get on board with, especially if you're in a Christian household. It would be amazing if we can see more of this. And I suspect that if we go ahead and get on board with this kind of dynamic, that you're going to see the divorce rate plummet, because both people are actively working to a unified goal where the status of both are being connected intrinsically in this enterprise. Whereas nowadays, I think people have just so much of an atomized, individualistic idea of what marriage and relationships and all this stuff should be. Let's continue.
Societies in human history where women were actually basically just locked inside 24/7.
Yeah.
Now, one of the place, if you want to look into research on this, and I think that she actually significantly understates this, was a Nobel Prize winning research by Claudia Godlin, who showed the U-shaped pattern in female labor, which shows basically what we said before, is that around, and I think that she actually gets some of her numbers wrong, but she tries to look at historical. Actually, I went back over her actual data, and her work is clearly misstated. If you're only familiar with the little cartoon she has of female labor, you'd get this impression that female labor started to die out in like the 1850s and then bottomed out in the 1910s and was never really significantly higher than male labor participation. But if you actually look at her data, you can see that this is nowhere near true. Also, just a funny side note here. Have you noticed that her most modern woman is wearing a hijab? Just so you know where she wants society going. But yeah, this cartoon that you may have seen of her work doesn't align with her actual data. What the actual data shows, which I think even she is afraid men will look at history and realize they shouldn't be saying, "Hey woman, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich." It's, "Hey woman, get in the field and cultivate me a sandwich." Whatever. But around 1910 is when, or let's say the 1900s is when male wage labor really began to pick up in any society. The idea that a man would leave the household, and this is when things began to fall apart. Because
The
remember
beginning
how
of
I
the
said,
end.
like,
Yes.
as society developed, right? Okay, well, now you've got the plow, now you've got specialization, now you don't have a woman gathering, now you don't have a woman on the farm, you have a woman managing the books and the supply chain and the sales and the managing the storefront, right? Like the classic example I'll give is, okay, you have a cobbler or you have a butcher or something like that. So the guy learns the skill. He learns how to cobble, he learns how to make the shoes, he learns how to handle the wrapping of it and everything like that. Very complicated. And the woman manages what women are disproportionately good at, which is interpersonal skills and bureaucracy. And so she manages the sitting behind the counter, taking the money, marketing the product, managing sort of guild bureaucratic stuff, managing the finances. Basically, women did a sort of middle management job. And as males, and this would be true like with whatever the profession was, whether you were a cobbler or whether you were a butcher or something like that, like why wouldn't, like, you've got to understand, men during this period didn't have this idea of masculinity that you had, right? They had an idea of masculinity, but if you went to them or their wives and you said something like, actually, the husband needs to manage all of this other stuff, right? Both the wife and the husband would be like, but why? Like, the husband is focused on the specialized skill that he needs to continue to improve so that our family can make money.
Notice that. Yeah, well, first of all, where's my dowry? Right? That's the thing. But the thing is, look at this dynamic. So she is doing the administrative, the sales, these things that are in support of the main show. The main show is the skilled labor. That is a thing that takes time to cultivate. It is relatively difficult to replace. It is more technically demanding of the man, whereas the woman is handling administrative matters and things of that nature. Both of them are building into the family enterprise that used to be, thank you, Tacitus 1979, a lot of times it would be financed by the dowry of the wife. So the wife's family would go ahead and provide the dowry. That would serve as the basis for the beginning of his technical training and all of that, so that he can be built up in a skill that she could come alongside and support him in, so that they can survive and thrive as a family. And the dowry oftentimes was a source of seed money in that conjugal fund so that it could happen in the first place. Shout out to the dowry. Shout out to Shaw. All right, let's continue.
Woman, have free time on my hands. Why would I not be managing the things that allow my husband to focus on his specialty skill?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it would come off as like completely insane that the husband would waste time that they could have cobbling or butchering or whatever their actual skill was to manage the shop, to manage the sales process, to manage the. It just would come across as like, are you just telling me to like waste money? Like, there are.
Because he was doing the majority of the manufacturing, right? And so without manufacturing, without the actual goods to sell, none of the support functions actually mattered. And he was the only one that was equipped with the skills, the knowledge, the abilities, and the talents to do that thing. So they operated in a specialized manner so that the family can go forward. Let's continue.
Kids, like, we're making this money for our family and our kids, because remember, historically, Simone wouldn't become Simone Collins, she'd become Mrs. Malcolm Collins, right? Like, people really had a combined identity, this idea of the woman's needs versus the man.
That's how my wife signs her correspondence, Mrs. Michael Richter. That's what she does. She doesn't go ahead and sign her own name. She signs my name. It's a traditional way to do it. We are one entity.
I wish we could bring that back, by the way, that you had to address someone by like their combined partner name going forward.
Yeah. Well, because you were one entity after.
Not combined partner name, by her husband's name. Like, okay, I'm being a little pedantic here, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. Let's continue.
It didn't make sense. This idea of males and females having competing needs is a modern concept that was created by the atomization of the family.
Yeah.
But anyway, so women had these sorts of roles, and then men, and keep in mind, these sorts of roles were roles that women were relegated into after all of the domains that women used to specialize in were taken away from them.
Yeah.
Like in farming, the reason why women stopped being the majority of farming labor after the invention of the plow is the plow required more brute strengths. So men were able to take it over. But also keep in mind, in a society historically, if you can be like, okay, but then why would society structure themselves this way? Like, why would societies have women be the majority calorie income generators, right? Like, what the heck were men doing if women were doing this, right? So if they were not out doing the high risk, high reward thing, why were men doing high risk, high reward martial adjacent activities? It was because women suck at war, okay?
We're really not.
Hey, we figured this out. It turns out that women, generally speaking, are terrible at warfare. So this is why men will do this. For those of you that are familiar with Andrew Wilson's content, we go ahead and look at force doctrine. There's a reason why we do these things. All right, let's go ahead and hit up Martin's comment. Because of hypergamy, why would a wife not want to be the middle management? The man in that case is more capable because of her selection. Yes, absolutely. And that would be the case in a modern context and in the ancient context. Both of those things would be true. In the ancient context, she would be more or less limited based on the kind of dowry that she had to provide, which oftentimes was a function of her father and what he did, whether he was middle class or whatnot. Would he be able, as a merchant, to provide a substantial dowry so they can go ahead and get them started? But in a modern context, most women don't want to be doing the risky things. They want to be doing the predictable, regular, ordinary, administrative things that are every day. We're going to do the same thing over and over again. That's why they love bureaucracy. That's why they love, dealing with people. More or less, they're the same. Whereas guys, we go ahead and do things like STEM. We go ahead and do warfare. We do inventions. We do all of the things that are relatively high risk and high reward so that we can push forward things that take depth of skill, depth of knowledge. These are things that are typically taken on by men and supported by women. This is why women, oftentimes, you're going to see secretaries get with their bosses. You're oftentimes going to go ahead and see paralegals getting with lawyers. They are seeing the guys that are on the chain up above them in work and finding ways to be useful to them as they continue. That way, their destinies are inextricably linked, just like in a marriage. Very useful thing to understand. Very helpful comment there, Martin. Appreciate you. Let's continue.
Good at it. Yeah.
That's what men were training on. And this also comes to hunter-gatherer societies. So in hunter-gatherer societies, and again, the manosphere always freaks out about this because they don't actually read the research. Leftists will say things like, well, actually, when you look at large studies like Andreessen et al. 2023, women hunted in 79% to 63% of foraging societies.
Yeah, but what were they hunting? Were they hunting the same things that we were hunting? Let's see.
So this is hunter-gatherer societies. And so they're like, of course, women wouldn't go on a mammoth hunt. And it's like, yeah, that's true. What were women hunting in these societies? Okay, because they weren't hunting what men were hunting in these societies. Men were hunting things that would prepare them for war, were allegories for war, because you had to defend your territory. This is why the male lion lazes about all day. Okay, what women were hunting were things like squirrels and bunnies and mice. They were hunting a completely different type of game. It was
low stakes. Yeah.
Yeah, low stakes,
low risk, low reward. Yeah.
Generally speaking, the rabbit is not going to come up and bite her head off, right? Whereas a lion could go ahead and wreck you. A mammoth can wreck you easily. They were hunting different things. So we specialize in different things because men were instruments of war back then, and we still can be. It's just one of those things where just because women hunted, and yeah, in the studies it shows that they hunted. Yeah, they were hunting different things though. Let's continue.
Yeah, but today as a guy, you're so like dichotomous, which is one of the things we try to break people out of on this channel. Like, well, there's hunting and there's gathering. And the moment you hear, oh, when a leftist says females were participating in 79% of the hunt, like that they hunted meat in 79% of hunter-gatherer societies, why would women arbitrarily not hunt bunnies when they saw a bunny, right? Like when they're foraging. Why would they opportunistically not make little traps for shrews and mice and stuff like that might be around the campsite, right? Mm-hmm. Why would they like just to arbitrarily be like, no, only men can touch meat? That's a weird way to just sort of cut your society, right? Like it makes no sense. I mean, when you think about it a little bit, you're like, oh yeah, that would make sense. A society where they demanded that men be the primary calorie getters, right? And women just stay at home all day. Well, those men don't have as much time to train for war anymore, right? And if they don't have as much time to train for war, well, what happens to those men in the long term? They and their way of life get eradicated.
So what happens to the women in that case? They become war brides. They go ahead and get taken off and married off to the victors of war. So you want to go ahead and make it so that men have the opportunity to be really good at warfare because it is essential to the survival of that society. Let's continue.
So what about the societies where you don't see this in a historic context? Like let's look at ancient Athens, right? Which is an actual historic counterexample. And we'll go through other historic examples here, but okay. So Athenian men, because they did not have women managing trade and finance and everything like that, they managed it themselves, right? Yeah. But that meant that they didn't have time to learn how to war. So how did Athenian men fight?
Oh my God, this is why we have democracy. This is why?
Yes, they fought with the lower castes and essentially slave labor. That is what powered the triremes that maintained the Athenian naval hegemony. Is incredibly, and as Simone was joking, this is where we get early votes being widely distributed because, if you have trireme members who, are otherwise pretty low caste, and you could say, well, now you get to vote, right? Well, you get to vote on which high caste person you want to
rule. Because no vote, I tell you what.
So this is interesting. So in Athens, they didn't have enough time for warfare. So the aristocracy or the middle class and above were, instead of actually training for warfare themselves, they would use the lower classes and slave labor to go ahead and fight wars on their behalf. And in order for them to do that, they would get a vote, and they can vote for whoever would, go over it. But the lower classes would be responsible for war. Crazy.
Yeah, no vote. But that's where that came from, right?
Mm.
Is that the Athenian male sort of citizen? They it's not that they never fought. Like you do see Athenians fight in history, but they leaned really hard on the lower castes in a way that other societies like Spartans and Thebes simply didn't. But to continue here, let's go with we've already gone over Vikings. I assume people are pretty familiar with Viking labor division, but let's look at medieval Europe. 13.
I always crack up though with that. What was that comedic Viking show where like there was one woman who would go raiding? And
Yeah, the
her
raping
husband
one.
stayed home. And I mean, they're like, well, of course she rapes and pillages and everything, just like all the other ones. And then like her husband's getting increasingly uncomfortable.
You're really proud of your wife, at least. I mean, Freya dove into that pillaging 100%. Even took part in quite a lot of the raping.
I don't think that happened very much. Yeah,
That is so wild. So wild. Okay. Let's go ahead and catch up on the comments. All right. So Martin said, I see it in my son playing Call of Duty. Want to have the Nerf guns and all that. It's ingrained in the male. Yes. My sons in their youth were very physically inclined. So something that they craved on a regular basis was rough and tumble play. So that would be wrestling on the bed. That'd be throwing that up in the air. That'd be like playing with like foam swords and stuff. Like at my store, we have like full on LARP weapons and all that. So we've got some really nice foam swords and shields and things like that we play with. And my smaller son, he's the same way. He loves to wrestle. It is part of us to want to develop martial prowess. And so my older son is getting to be that age where it's time for him to start developing some martial prowess. So I'm going to be getting him into some MMA. And then after about a year, we're going to go ahead and get him some good firearms training. And we're going to go ahead and get him trained in various weapons and modalities of war so that he at least has a baseline level of competency in terms of him being able to defend himself, defend his family, and defend his countrymen in the event the need were to arise. So I think this is a formal responsibility of fathers to go ahead and make sure that their sons are well prepared for the potential of things to go wrong if they do. So that's why I'm going to be doing these things. All right. Raise new life. What do you mean by responsible? Okay. I actually don't know what that's in context to. If you want to go ahead and provide a secondary comment, I can go ahead and react to that. Competition is natural for boys, and combat is the ultimate competition. Absolutely. We love competing with one another. We compete naturally, viscerally. We compete in status hierarchies. We compete in competence hierarchies. We compete for status in so many ways. And what's interesting is in a lot of ways that ends up being a shortcut selection method for women to find solid mates. Is they just go ahead and look at the hierarchies, because guys have pyramid-shaped hierarchies, whereas women typically have like flat hierarchies by their nature. So they're going to look at the guys at the top of the hierarchies and they go, these guys are really good. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and pick those guys. So that's important there. Yeah, I love playing with my sons and handling business and taking care of them and showing them the ways that they should go. Let's see. Praise God. It's very important. We are not allowed to have guns in the Netherlands. Man, I am so sorry to hear about that, Martin. It's just one of those things where in the United States, we have the right to keep and bear arms. And so I want to go ahead and make sure that my sons can responsibly handle firearms well. And I want my daughters to have a baseline understanding of how to handle firearms so that in the event they need to be called upon to do things, that they have a baseline level of competency to defend themselves and defend their loved ones. Happy Mother's Day to Bruce Jenner. Okay, yeah, whatever. It's just one of those things. I'm not going to insult their looks. They're great people. I really enjoy their content. I have the highest respect for Malcolm and Simone Collins. They're great people. So we'll continue on.
In terms of like female sailors, there was that one famous female pirate who like masqueraded as a man and it developed this ingenious way to urinate without showing that she was a woman. But yeah, tough times.
Anyway, So in medieval Europe, the farmland was a joint production unit, but tasks were sharply gendered along lines based on physical demand, risk, and compatibility with childcare. Men handled higher risk, strength-intensive field work. Plowing was oxen. So this is after the plow, by the way, is what I'm going over here.
Okay, so remember, in medieval feudal Europe, you had feudalism. So this is why it's group farm. All right, and we're back. Okay, cool. So in feudalism, what you had is you had a local lord that would be over a fiefdom, and then from there they would go ahead and collect their taxes, or they would collect the tribute, and that tribute would go above to the next level of nobility, or to the king, or whatever the monarch was in that area, whether it be a duke or other titled gentry. But it would filter up, and so the baseline responsibility was handled at the fiefdom level, and then you would have people administering those fields on behalf of the monarchy. Let's continue.
Mowing and threshing grain. Women focused on lower risk, more reliable tasks that could be multitasked near young children, gleaning leftover grain for the harvest, clearing weeds, binding sheaves, making hay, collecting wood, and sheep shearing. Harvesting itself was often shared. Women also managed garden, livestock, dairy, poultry, and most crucially dominated textile production, spinning and weaving, which formed the backbone of both household needs and export industry. They produce cloth, ale, cheese, and other goods for home use or local sale. So it's important.
Huge.
That's interesting. That sounds a whole lot like what the Proverbs 31 woman was doing. So we had guys that were manning the plow and other things that were very strength intensive by their nature. And women would handle things that, generally speaking, were doable with children in tow or children nearby. So the roles of men and women really haven't changed a whole lot, because generally speaking, a lot of times women nowadays can also do work from home where the kids can be nearby and things of that nature. That hasn't really changed. Let's continue.
If you were a farming family, of the stuff you sold, the majority of it was produced by women.
Yeah.
These are your cheeses. People don't realize how important cheese was as an export product. It was so important that in medieval Scotland, you would pay your taxes in cheese. Like, it was just like, this is the easy.
That's pretty wild.
And I could just imagine the king's cellar full of cheeses, right? Like,
yeah, it's the chocolate of Europe before.
Yeah.
Chocolate.
So they would produce that. They would produce the cloth, which was also an easy export product. They would produce your textiles, which was an easy export product. Men were not producing these things. And keep in mind, this is post plow. This is post women no longer doing the majority of farming.
Yeah, so this is, you would argue, artificially depressed.
Yeah, this is women at like one of their low points in human history, one of their low regions in human history, still doing a great deal of the labor.
Totally.
This idea, again, do not allow yourself to be cucked into this belief that women just did childcare and education. They did not. They did the majority of what we would today call labor.
Yep. They were making the cheese. They were doing all this kind of things. This is what the deal was. I mean, shoot, they were paying taxes in cheese back in the day. Why? Because it was a luxury good in a lot of ways. And two, cheese is very calorically dense. So you didn't have to eat that much cheese to meet your caloric needs for, people that are laboring and things of that nature. It is a very solid source of nutrition for the masses.
And did speculative ventures, which is very different from like just labor. And note, they were not building because people were like, well, were they out there building architecture and new houses and stuff like that? It's like, no, because that is more in the category of speculative venture. To do something like that, what do you need to do? You typically need some form of loan, some sort of existing business supply. These are building a building is a high risk, high reward thing.
Yeah.
Building a wagon
it still is now a relatively risky endeavor. If you are not good at being a home builder, you can lose your shirt real easy if you don't know what the heck you're doing.
Historically was very expensive. That's a
Oh, yeah.
high reward thing, okay? That requires some level of artisanal expertise. Those were what men did historically. But
Yep.
keeping the family alive is what women did historically. And I'll note here, I repeatedly see families think they're doing something like new and progressive and converge back on this. They're like, oh yeah, the wife is like the nurse or the the stable job that makes a decent income,
Yeah.
and then the husband is the entrepreneur.
Yes.
This is I'd almost say it's like the normal structure among most of our friends in relationships.
Which is interesting because that's basically the same structure, but in a modern context. The woman would be doing something that is stable. It would be the thing that provides the food and the basic rent, while the guy can go ahead. So once again, she does the shield work where she is defending the home or the home in terms of daily caloric intake, making sure that there's shelter needs and things like that. Whereas the guy is doing the sword work. He is doing the stuff that is more speculative, higher risk, higher reward, higher likelihood to elevate the status of the family for an extended period of time. So in my own family, I came from abject poverty and I grew up with nothing. And in my time, I made substantial investments in real estate, and that's where I earned the majority of my wealth. And I was doing that while I was in the Air Force. These are things that I would do to advance the status of my family. So now my children will not have the same level of difficulties that I had when I was growing up. They're going to be advantaged in ways that I wish I had access to because they're going to get a head start in life. But I have high expectations of them to continue the family line because that's important to me, and it is a condition of their continuance in that level of luxury. So this is fantastic example of a modern context of an older version of the division of labor in a family.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Wife has like a W-2 steady job. Husband does something risky for sure.
Yeah. As historian Jane Whittle noted, by the way, drawing on coroner rolls, women's accidental deaths were overwhelmingly domestic or village based, 61%. Now, I would note that what's really interesting there is you can say, oh, that's huge. Women only died within the village at 61% of the time. Now, keep in mind what that means. 49% of women were dying outside of the village. Why were women, if women were like these shut-ins during the medieval period, 1300 to 1500,
yeah.
And this is from Jane Whittle's work, why were so many of them outside of the village?
Well, these are specifically, though, they're accidental deaths. So that's unusual, too.
Well, right, but this means you're putting yourself at risk when you go outside the village. No
sure,
matter what, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Doing these sorts of, I'm just pointing out that like this happened. Now let's go to urban settings. Oh, and this is where.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and compare that to the modern world, where the vast majority of accidental death due to labor is on the shoulders of men. It's nearly 100%. It's in the high 90% of workplace injuries and workplace deaths happening to men in terms of accidents. However, back in the day, women were exposed to more of that external threat when they were outside of the village handling whatever they were handling. Let's continue.
Simone's spicy information comes into play. Do you want to go into it? Genetic evidence that shocked you.
Gosh, yes. No. I still have to post about it, but there's been this mystery going around on X recently related to new research came out. Here's one of the headlines covering it in Science Tech Daily. Birds in cities fear women more than men. Scientists don't know why.
Okay, this is where they got their opener from. All right, so that's where I'm going to go ahead and end it for today, or at least for right now. I've got to go ahead and handle a couple of interviews for employees that are looking to go ahead and get promoted into a lower level management position. So I've got to go ahead and conduct interviews with my general manager and make sure that we're picking the right people for the job. And that's just what it is. I'll probably be back later after those interviews are done. And I'm going to go ahead and go over the rest of how women trick men into doing all the work while still playing the victim, and courtesans and concubines, why we need them back. That's what's going to go ahead and happen later today. So thank you so much for your viewership. I really appreciate you hanging out with me. If you haven't, please hit the like button. And if you like what you saw here and you're looking forward for more, please hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you know what's coming up when it's coming up. I look forward to seeing more of you later, and feel free to check out some other topics that are going on the channel. We've handled a lot of marriage-related stuff this week, and we've got some spicy stuff coming up next week. Thanks so much for your viewership. I hope you have a fantastic day.